Hi guys, good morning. I'm just going to give you a little disclaimer about this video. It's supposed to be about planning, but none of us really know what's going to happen going into this new school year. I'm literally waiting to find out on about my position, and I'm waiting to find out whether I have to go from room to room, which will completely change the way that I teach. And I'm waiting to find out if we're going to be in person or not, because it's still, I think that we're going to be there with half of our students, but there is a possibility still that at this weekend's board meeting, we may end up finding out something different. There may be a different ruling that comes out of that. I really have no idea what to expect. So literally, I'm laughing as I'm editing my video. I'm going to try to make the best of the situation and really focus on how do we plan for virtual lessons, because as our superintendent wisely stated, you can teach a virtual lesson in person, but you can't teach an in-person lesson virtually. So that's the stance that I'm going to take, and with that in mind, I'm going to give you some tips of things that I learned the hard way last spring and the things that I'm planning on doing to make my life a little easier going into the fall if I'm still teaching what I think I'm teaching.
Explícame a mí.
So now I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how I do my organization and some of the things that I learned the hard way last spring. So hopefully this will be helpful to you, to those of you who have not done virtual instruction before, because I know that a lot of states, they just decided that they weren't going to do anything. Once the coronavirus hit, a lot of states decided that they were just going to take time off with their students, and some of them just sent home some optional work, which is completely different than being required to actually teach. I know that all of you are going to be in different places because some of your districts will expect you to teach daily online, so that students can log in at a particular time, be there for your class. Other districts will be expecting a combination of asynchronous and synchronous, which just means whether or not the student is participating at the same time as you. And some districts are completely without the teacher. So the teacher develops the materials, but then, is just there if the kids have questions. So you do need to make sure that you understand what your district is expecting of you, but I'm going to kind of give you an example of what my district has decided on, the parts that I know, and hopefully you can adapt it for your own situation. And I'm going to share today my top 10 tips for going back to school in 2020. All right, so tip number one, this was a huge comment by a lot of our parents and a lot of our students, was that they seem to have trouble finding their materials. Now, as a teacher, I realize you can do everything right. You can have everything very organized, and your students will still say, I don't know where it is. I don't know how to get to it. I can't do my work because I don't know how to get to it. Sometimes that's just an excuse for not doing their work. But hopefully we will get to meet with our students in person for a little while in our district, and kind of set the tone for that and make sure that we have taught everything about remote learning before we have to be in a situation where they would say, hey, we're shutting down again to only virtual for a while because of a spike. We really don't know what to expect in the fall. They're talking about a second wave. Maybe it'll happen, maybe it won't. I'm hopeful that it won't, but our students really need to be with us if they can, but also, you know, if it's not safe, then it's not safe. So we want to make sure we take care of everybody. But one of the biggest things is just making sure you have a way that you're organizing everything. Instead of having assignments in a whole bunch of emails or pieces and parts or a whole bunch of different things, like for example on Google Classroom, instead of giving students something each and every day in Google Classroom, for example, you can organize everything in one weekly assignment and then students go to the slides for the day. So this is an example of my farm to table lesson. This is a lesson on foodborne pathogens that I actually have already taught last spring. I started off with whatever was on everyone's mind already, which was viruses, and I went to bacteria and other types of pathogens. And so then we discussed the standards that the students needed to know from their biology unit with the virus in mind, which was a really good segue into our learning, because you can't, like, you have to address the thing that's on the kid's mind, which is the virus last spring. So that's why I decided to start with that. But let me show you what this looked like. So if I look at my slides here, the first day I have investigations for the week. So this is basically like, what are they going to learn this week? And I always put it in the form of a question. I do not write actual standards in here. I put them in, they're from the standards, but my questions are things that kids will understand. And then I have day one, and then I have basically I have set this up so that these are linked. So when you click on it, that one's not working because I don't have a live link on that right now because that's my class meeting. When you click on it, it's going to go to the link. So this one is Meet Dr. X. It's a video that students are going to watch that's about bacteria and cross-contamination in their own kitchens. And then this is a Quizlet vocabulary with a preview of the vocabulary, and that also gives me an opportunity to pre-test students' knowledge. So everything is right there. It's organized for students. What I would do is, and you have to be very careful about this because you don't want to post anything with live links to like Zoom calls or Google Meets on your like Facebook page or your website or anything like that. So when I would actually put this out so parents could see what the students were doing, but I would remove the live link, or I would make a copy that was a parent copy that did not have live links in it for any of my Google Meets. So that way students were protected. We were protected from anybody strange trying to come into our meeting. I can actually show you guys how I constructed this with all the links if that's something you're interested in. It's a simple process. It takes time. These, I'm gonna be honest with you, we're not like short to create to make them like this, but this background here, right here, is a free background from, let me see. This one was Slides Go. So there are different ones like Slides Carnival and some other ones that, as long as you attribute the author, put a reference at the end for your author of the art, that you can have a free template. So I picked something that would go with my theme. So at least that part was done for me to make it look nice. And then I just added a text box. I added these buttons as shapes. I put an outline. I added a text box here. And then once you highlight your text like this, then the option comes up for you to click link, and then you can link it so that when they click on either this or the button, it will link to wherever you want them to go. So like I said, I can show you more a tutorial that's in detail about that later if you'd like, but that's how I did it. So then day two, they had another short video to watch, and this was linked to a Padlet where the students could go in and they could respond to some questions that I had that went with the video, and then they could look at each other's answers and respond. So this is like giving students the opportunity to collaborate. And then another vocabulary practice where I have students actually do some matching, which is a different activity than day one. Then on the third day, I had notes. So they've done some things to find out about it. Sometimes I might have an experiment at the beginning of the week that's with simple materials that they could find out around the house. Or if they can't, then for virtual students, I would include like something that's a virtual lab that would be a similar experience for them as what they would do hands-on in the classroom. And then this is a day where they actually come in and they find out why this works now. So now they have the text with the notes. They are going to take their own notes. It was suggested to me to make it an option for students to see each other's notes, which you can do if they're taking notes online through like a Google Doc. Then they can share with each other and they can comment on each other's notes. That's something you have to teach your students in structure in the beginning, or do videos on to show them how to do it. When I had my class meetings with my students, I often use that as time to kind of show them how to do the basic operations of certain platforms that I wanted them to use. That's what we call ground zero in instructional technology, where you have to teach the child to use the platform before you have them use it for something actually that they're doing to learn. So if you are not able to meet with your students at the beginning of the year in person to teach them some of these ground zero things, then I would highly recommend that you do that through videos or use your class meetings that are required where students have to log in at a certain time. Use them for that. If you're not allowed by your district to require any meetings where students are working at the same time as you, which is synchronous learning, then you can always, like I said, do videos, or you can have kids sign up to meet with you like one-on-one through a Google Meet so that you can show them how to do that. But it's really important before you give them some work to do on something that they actually know how to use it. All right, so then day 4, this is a menu board. It's a very simplified menu board. What I did here is I have 4 News ELA articles. I created a text set in News ELA, which if you don't know how to do that, I can help you with it. But basically there's 4 articles that are about the topic that we're learning about, which has to do with contamination, bacterial contamination, and how it happens in different places. And these are nice because it's current events. So these are real news articles about things. This one's about airplane food. This one's about, washing your hands and how it helps with the stop of germs. And then this one's about E. coli and how they trace it in lettuce, which the video that we did on Tuesday was about the farm to table video. It was about blueberries and how they go through from the farm to, picking and processing and packing, shipping to the grocery, how the grocer takes care of them, and then what you do when you get home. So all those different steps in the supply chain. So that was kind of a good article for me to include here because it piggybacked on that idea of our food has many different places where we have to protect it from contamination. Just like sometimes there's, lettuce that gets contaminated and they have to pull it off the shelves and trace it back and find out where that came from. So this is a menu board. You could do a menu board on anything really, but you, just like before, you have an image and you link the different boxes in your menu to something that you want students to do. You can link it to your own teacher-made Google document. You can link it to, a lot of times if I make a handmade assignment for students that's online, I like to use Google Slides and just make a single slide for it. And you can go in and you can change your slide size. So if I wanted to make a copy of this, and I just want to do selected slides, so I would just click on a slide that I wanted to make a copy of. File, make a copy, selected slides, and then I would title it whatever I want. Then what I'm going to do is when I open it up, I can change this to an 8.5 by 11 size. So it's the size of a paper. So if I do, okay, so file, and you have to scroll all the way down to page setup. And when you do page setup, you can do custom. And what you would do is you would do 8.5 by 11 and apply. Or you could do like 11 by 14, whatever. And this is really small like this right now, but this gives me the option that, I'm going to take these out of here so that it's easier for you to see what I mean. I can, in the corner there, make a large text box, and then I can type anything in it that I want for the students to do. And if I force the students to make a copy of that, then they can type right in it and they can submit their own copy to me. And I mean, that's another like tutorial in and of itself, showing, you know, how to force a copy and how to have students submit their individual copies. But basically, you can put your directions in here, and then students can type right in there, and then they would share it like to Google Classroom or whatever platform you have that you are using. On Friday, I always do Monday meeting, and I do Friday some type of fun day. So I don't make Fridays a big deal when we're doing virtual only. And even in my regular classroom, I try to make it light, and I use the extra time for, you know, test corrections, corrections on any work, for growth time, social emotional activities, and I also, after we've done our assessing for the week, I might work with some students and give the rest of the class something else that's kind of, you know, easy, fun to do, that would be enriching, you know, related to our curriculum, but just light, because people just need that on Fridays. And especially in a virtual environment, it's kind of nice for them to work 4 days a week really hard on something, and then on Friday they get to take their little assessment and then relax. So I always made Friday like a fun day, and we did a lot of live Kahoots. So I have a Kahoot here, and this one actually has a USDA booklet that is linked to this. That is something that they can take and they could print it out, or they could just share it on their Chromebook with their families. I teach middle school right now, so you know, this would be something that like I can see a brother and sister doing together for fun. And some of them will do it if they're bored at home. Some of them will be like, that's, you know, stupid, I'm not doing that. But it's there for them, and it's not a requirement, but it's like, you know, a way to encourage them to, you know, show what they've learned by teaching it to someone else. I know that that's important to me, that I give my students those opportunities, even if not all of them are going to take them, because that's something that I always love to do. And I'm a teacher now, so I appreciated the teachers that gave me opportunities like that, where I could teach my siblings something cool that I learned, or I could go home and I could share with my parents something that maybe might seem like too adult for me to know, but my teacher taught it to me this week. So I just always like to give them that opportunity. All right, tip number 2. Be consistent. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about this, because depending on what your principal is asking you to do, depending on what your district's asking you to do, you might not have a choice at all. But one thing that we are talking about is making sure that we have the same platform for the same students in the same grade level, so that they're not using like Canvas in one class and Google Classroom in another. I have to admit, this is something that is kind of like on my nerves right now, because I like Google Classroom, and I think it's just because Canvas seems to be designed to me from the standpoint of like a mathematical, logical person. You would think that would be me because I'm a science teacher, but no, I am more like right-brained creative than anything else, and I approach my subject area from that direction. And I love to do creative things, and to me, I don't see how I'm going to be able to do that on Canvas yet. But I have committed to learning Canvas because I know that another one of my colleagues uses it, a couple of my colleagues use it, and then the other half of us were using Google Classroom this year, simply because we found it to be easy to figure out. And also, I think part of my reasoning was that it seemed to be easy for parents to figure out. And I'm not saying that the parents are supposed to be doing their kids' work. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, if a parent's trying to help a student, they also need to understand how to access the platform so that they can see where their kid's going wrong. So, you know, you can't help someone if you don't already understand the platform. So I think that, you know, for me, if it was simple for me to figure out, then it would be simple for my parents. And we had questions about, you know, in Canvas, like I don't understand how to attach things and things like that. So anyway, I'm committed to learning Canvas this year. I might pull my hair out over it, but I'm starting the training. I think I'm going to just bite the bullet and start it like on Monday and figure it out, and I'll build it and convert over to it as I go. All right, tip number 3. I already talked about this, so I can breeze right through it. Monday meeting and Friday finale, or Friday fun day, whatever you want to call it, but it's just something fun. So I found that last spring, my students worked harder for me and did more for me if I met with them all through Google Meet on Monday. Now, I'm not saying you should require students to sign in to the point where you're docking their grade for it or anything like that. That's not what I'm suggesting. Have another option for kids who something happens and they just can't get online. There are going to be kids like that. There's going to be kids where their internet goes down, or their parents, didn't pay for it, and so they don't have internet that day and they can't get on, or they threw their kids in the car and made them go somewhere against their will. These kids, they're not drivers, so they go where their parents tell them to. So you can't really make a kid that is middle school make sure that they log in at a certain time. I think once they get to high school, like if they're the driving age and you know that they have a license, then that's a little bit different. But as far as having kids log in at a certain time, like they have to, that's the only way, I wouldn't do it. But I would encourage it, and I would kind of like make it sound like it's a requirement. But then if kids ask about it, like they have a problem, then say, I'll talk to you about it separately from the class, and then give them, another option. But I think that the kids work a lot better for you if you can introduce the week. You can go through your slides. You can say, this is what we're learning. You can give them like a really quick, like soundbite kind of little activity that brings them together and focuses them on what they're going to be learning for the week. Then if they need you, they're going to be more likely to like send a message in the chat, or, say, hey, can you Google Meet or whatever, so that you just keep in touch with your students better. The more you're available and the more you're in touch with your students, the more they will work for you. And the Friday finale was just fun. So if I offered something fun to do on Friday, it was a great assessment tool for me so that I knew what I needed to do next. And then what I need to come back to with certain kids, that kind of thing. And then it also just kind of brought the class together. And anytime you bring the class together, you have an opportunity to check on them and make sure that they're doing okay. Make sure that they are, that their families are okay, and that they don't need anything like from a social emotional standpoint. Having those Mondays and Fridays where I always checked in with the kids was really great for that. Another way that I kept in touch with my students, and I would have to show this in a different tutorial, but was I had a running chat box in my Google Hangouts. So I would go in there every day and be like, good morning, don't forget this is what you have to do today, how's everybody doing? And then the kids would come in and you can see who's been in there even if they don't say anything. So it kind of like just encourages participation and keeps your class together. All right, tip number 4. This is the fun one, pajama parties. And I know you're probably thinking like pajama party with middle schoolers. Well, this is virtual. If you are in a situation where you have students, even if you have half of your students virtual and half of them in person, you can still do this. I would not have the pajama party at school, but what I would do is I would offer it like, say on a Friday night, or a Friday day if you had your students, only there for like 4 days and then, remote for the 5th, because a lot of places are doing that. But basically, so what I did for mine, you can do whatever you want. I always had like a topic of conversation at the beginning. Sometimes I would share how to do a recipe, like those tasty things. I would do one of them and I would tape it and I would talk to the kids while I was making it. And they were always eating their snacks and stuff like that. A lot of them wore pajamas, some of them didn't. I did say a couple of things about like what's appropriate, what's not, but I didn't have anyone push it. So it never became an issue. And then we just met for like an hour, hour and a half, whatever you feel like you have time for. But I just did it out of my house. I did mine on Thursday nights so that on Friday we had the game in the morning and then we were done. But depending on whether you're at home all the time or whether you are, at school and then, home part of the time, that can make a difference in what you do. But that's just my recommendation to you. It's a fun little way to keep tabs on your class and My students talked to me about all kinds of things they never would have talked to me about otherwise. And I felt like I got closer to my students in that time than I had been able to be in my face-to-face classroom time. Now, not all of my students attended the pajama parties. Some of them were like, well, why is she doing that? That's weird. Some of them didn't have internet that was good enough to get into the Google Meet or the Zoom link. So, then that left them out, even though I said, hey, you can call in, but that was an extra step that they didn't want to do. So, it's not going to take care of everyone. You still have to like scoop up those kids that are on the fringes that need that extra support separately, but it is a good thing to instill. And I probably had like 10 to 12 kids that participated, not all of them at the same time, but throughout the course of our, I think we did it for 8 weeks of learning. I had like maybe 5 of these pajama parties, and I had probably 12 kids that were involved at different times, and had a couple of people that came in, like administrators that popped in and things like that. So that was fun too. All right, tip number 5, set your hours. And every single video that you see on YouTube from teachers that is promoting best tips for virtual learning will include this tip, because as teachers, we are like people that give and give and give and give, and we have to set limits for ourselves. I was terrible at this. I was responding to students at all hours of the day and night. I actually had some kids that tried to message me at 2 in the morning. I did not respond to those messages, but I learned quickly that I needed to turn my phone to a setting at a certain time where I wasn't even going to get the notifications, so I wasn't even tempted. The nice thing that I absolutely love that our district has done for us, and you can, if you're still in the planning stages, you can suggest this to your administrators and higher ups that have the ability to make these calls. We are offering the option for students to come to school, and if they come to school, they're going to be there from like 8 to 1. We're going to feed them and we're going to send them home. At 1:30, we're going to have the students that have decided to be virtual from 1:30 to 3:30, where those are like our office hours. And office hours doesn't mean that's the only time they can work, but what it means is it's the time when we're strictly available to them for questions. So if they want to hop on and do a Google Meet, you're there. You're sitting there and you're paying attention to your Google Hangouts, or you are responding to emails or whatever, helping them with whatever they need. And then at 3:30, which is our regular time to be done, we get to go home. Now, as you know, we don't really go home at 3:30, but what I'm saying to you is, like, if you had a day where you had to go home at 3:30, you could in my situation. So I would highly recommend that, because that makes it so that you're not a virtual teacher and an in-person teacher at the same time. You just can't do it. It's too much. So I thought I was going crazy with doing the virtual before. If I tried to do those things at the same time, I would not be able to handle all of that. So setting your hours is really important, and get the help of your administrators and kind of finding out what they think is appropriate and what the limits are for your school district. All right, tip number 6, and this is like any class. If you're in person or if you're virtual, it doesn't matter. Don't expect to just keep hitting new material all the time. You have to build in days where what you're going to do is basically go back and help the kids that need help. So, we have a growth mindset in our school district that we should continue to work with students on a topic until they've mastered it, 80% or higher. And because of that, I could stay on the same unit for a really, really long time, but I don't want to do that either, because I want to make sure that I give the proper exposure to all the standards that the students are supposed to learn. So what I do instead is I have cycles of instruction, and I always make sure that I'm assessing as I'm teaching, and I'm providing special personalized instruction to students that I think will work best for them, which kind of like closes the gap of how many kids you're going to need to remediate with if you give it to them the first time in the way that they can learn best. And that just goes back to knowing your students really well. But then I also have set days where it's no new material. It's either enriching material for the kids that have already mastered all of the standards, or it's remediation for the kids that have not. So set yourself up on a cycle, whether you're in person or whether you are virtual, where you can come back to things and you can reinforce things. Sometimes a nice way to do this is to teach the beginning of a concept and then slide your remediation in when you come to another standard that links really well with that standard. I like to do it that way because it just makes the most sense in your curriculum when you use your remediation with a supporting standard. Tip number 7, sorry. Tip number 7 is have some way of students getting to know you. So a virtual meet the teacher. And I have linked a whole bunch of resources. At the end of this, I'm going to link this Google Slides presentation that you can make your own copy of in the description box. And inside of that, this is actually linked so that if you click on it, it will go straight to these different resources. But there's also links at the end on the before the credits slide. So these are a couple of people that I found that have good resources for virtual Meet the Teacher. This is a blog right here, and this one is actually a YouTuber that I follow. She's really sweet. She's a newer, younger teacher, but she has some great techie ideas, and she just presents it in a simple way. So I just linked those two there, but there are others too that give you ideas for how you can do like a slideshow. Anything that you do with students to get to know you in the beginning, you can make it virtual. So these are just some good places to get ideas for that. All right, tip number 8, you are going to need professional development this year. You always should be thinking like that. You should be reading and learning all the time, but especially as we go into this unknown world of virtual / in-person learning, that's like something we've never experienced before. You need to make sure you are renewing yourself and filling yourself up. The more you get new ideas that you're excited to try, that will make some of the stress level go down. It will bring back some of the joy of teaching that you have for your profession, and it will just keep you like on an even keel. So make sure you're pouring into yourself all the time. Here are some places that are linked. Online Learning Consortium has a lot of resources for teachers that are doing remote learning. The Friday Institute has a great remote learning opportunity that it's free, and I'm signing up for that, so I'm going to be starting that soon. And then there are many Facebook groups for educators, and this blogger has a list of the best ones. I'm a member of several ones for my subject area for science. If you're an elementary teacher, they have one specific to elementary. They have one specific to literacy, one specific to instructional coaches. Whatever you do, you can find it. And it's just really nice because you can go in there on your social media and you can type a question of something that's bothering you, and you get like 50 billion answers from different people that have experience at varying levels and varying places. So it's pretty awesome. All right, tip number 9, take care of yourself. I am preaching to myself right now because I'm really bad about this, but make sure that you get enough rest. Make sure that you honor your office hours. Make sure that you kindly enforce your office hours. You need time with your family. You need time to eat healthy, nutritious food. Do not fill yourself with junk because you're in a hurry. You need time to get exercise of some kind, however that looks to you. I have, as some of you have been following me, you know that I'm going to be getting knee surgery probably next summer.
Did I just make the video?
What? You did that on purpose. Anyway, just make sure that you are paying attention to that, because it's so easy when you're so busy trying to learn something new and help all these students in different settings that, you know, that can go by the wayside for you. But what I was saying is, some of you know that I'm getting knee surgery as soon as I can schedule it. That will be, you know, it will work out for my school building, you know, and for my personal situation. And so I have to exercise in a modified way right now, but it doesn't matter what level you're at. Just make sure you're doing something to keep yourself healthy. Tip number 10, this is my last one. Expect the unexpected to happen. We are in unknown territory. I'm going to give you an example of one that I can see happening right now in my school district. I like to think ahead. I think ahead about a lot of things. Some people call that control freak. Other people say it's being smart. I think it's being smart. I like to plan ahead for things, and a lot of things don't happen to me as often because I have like contingency plans for everything in my life. So when something goes the wrong way, I just like, I'm not phased because I already knew what I was going to do when that happened. One of these things that I'm seeing right now that is probably going to happen in my classroom is that we are offering the opportunity, since we can have our entire student body social distance and still be in our buildings. That's a possibility. That if parents change their mind about whether they want virtual or in person, then we're going to take their kids like whatever day they show up. And so if you think about this as a teacher, I was trying to say in a meeting that this was going to be a little bit of a problem from a planning standpoint because it's moving pieces. It is going to be a little bit of a problem, and here's why. If you have materials that you have prepared for a certain number of students, and you knew that students can't share materials, then if you have students show up unexpectedly to the classroom to do something, in the past, what we would do is we would just be like, oh, go sit with so-and-so. You can't do that now. You can't do that because you have social distancing in place, and you're not going to be allowed to sit two people together because you don't have enough worksheets, or you don't have enough, I don't really use a lot of worksheets, but I just said that because it came out, but you don't have enough like lab materials. So now that kid is there. Well, what's going to end up happening, I think, is my student that shows up like that, they're going to have to do the virtual lesson because I don't have enough things prepared for them that day. That's just my contingency plan. Okay, so expecting things to go wrong helps you plan for when they do so that you will not be as stressed. The more you're prepared for, and there will be things that you can't prepare for, but the more you are prepared for, the better you're going to be able to handle everything so that it will not phase you when it happens. So just spend some time thinking about it. Think about your district's plan. Think about the different things that, could happen, and be prepared for whatever. I'm not going to want to prepare enough materials for an entire class when I only have 50% of my students, just in case somebody shows up, because that's wasteful. And our district also does not have a lot of funding, so I don't want to waste funding preparing a lot of materials that I'm not going to need. So instead, by knowing that my contingency plan is if they show up, I don't have materials for them that day, they'll do the virtual lesson. It's already online. It's already there for the kids that are at home. It works. They have their Chromebook. They can just do it there at school and ask me questions if they have trouble. And they can see what the other kids are doing. So they'll get that experience of watching the lab. And then, hopefully I will know that they're going to be back tomorrow. So then tomorrow, if I have something like that, it'll be ready. So, all right. So that's my 10 best tips for going back to school in 2020. I hope that you have enjoyed this. If there's something you'd like to see a more detailed tutorial on, please make a comment in the comment box. Don't forget to like and subscribe and click that little bell so that you will get all of my newest videos when they come out. As always, don't forget to work hard, be kind, and amazing things will happen. Have a great day, everybody. Bye-bye.